I am Elijah Mercer, 34 years old, and tonight I stood in a tuxedo that cost more than my father's car, listening to him tell a room full of people that I was a failure. Before I tell you how the love of my brother's life ended up screaming my name in front of 150 stunned guests, drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Let's start in the parking lot. That's usually where guys like me are supposed to stay, right? I stepped out of a dented Toyota Camry Uber. The driver, a nice guy named Rashid, had wished me luck. He probably thought I was heading into a firing squad. He wasn't far off. The gravel crunched under my dress shoes as I looked up at the Bethesda Country Club. It was a massive white-pillared beast of a building, glowing against the night sky like a cruise ship docked in a sea of manicured grass. Right in front of the entrance, the valets were scrambling. I saw why. My father's pride and joy, a Rolls-Royce Phantom, was being parked right next to a brand-new, cherry-red Porsche 911 GT3. The vanity plate on the Porsche read, "Dr. Jules." My stomach tightened. That car was a graduation gift. A congratulations on becoming a doctor gift for my younger brother, Julian. I reached into my pocket. My thumb brushed against the cold, hard surface of a ring. It wasn't a wedding ring. It was heavy, gold, with a dark onyx stone in the center, embossed with the crest of Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. I didn't wear it on my finger. Not tonight. Tonight, I was undercover in my own family. I took a breath that tasted like expensive cologne and old money, and I let my mind drift back. I had to remind myself why I was doing this, why I hadn't just cut them off years ago. It went back 16 years. I was 18. I remember the smell of that night perfectly. My mother, Linda, had made meatloaf. She only made meatloaf when she was trying to smooth something over, or when she expected Dad to be in a bad mood. The kitchen smelled like onions and ketchup, a smell that used to mean home but now just makes me nauseous. I was sitting at the dining room table, my leg bouncing nervously. Under my placemat was a letter. I had checked the mail 3 times that day. When I saw the thick envelope from the university, I almost passed out on the driveway. "Dad," I said. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat and tried to sound like a man. "Dad, I got something today." Arthur Mercer didn't look up from his steak. He was sawing into it with surgical precision. Ironic, considering he didn't think I had the hands for surgery. "Pass the salt, Elijah." I passed the salt. "It's a letter. From the university. The pre-med program." That got his attention. He paused, fork halfway to his mouth. He looked at me, then at the envelope I was sliding across the polished oak table. He didn't open it. He just looked at the return address. "I got in," I said, a smile breaking onto my face despite the tension. "They accepted me. It's going to be hard, but with the college fund, I can make it work without taking out massive loans in the first year." My father let out a sound. It was a short, sharp puff of air through his nose. A laugh. He picked up his wine glass, swirled the red liquid, and took a slow sip. "Elijah," he said, his voice calm, reasonable. The voice he used when he was explaining why our insurance premiums were going up. "Look at your hands." I looked down. My hands were on the table. They were normal hands, maybe a little large. I had spent the summer helping a neighbor fix his fence, so I had a few calluses. "Those are workers' hands," he said. "They are big, clumsy. They are made for hammers and wrenches, not scalpels." "I have a 4.0 GPA, Dad," I argued. "I got into the program." "Getting in is easy," he dismissed. "Staying in requires a certain intellect, a sharpness I just don't see in you, son. You're a good boy, Elijah. You're strong. You're loyal. But you're slow." "I'm not slow," I whispered. "You take after your mother's side," he continued, ignoring me. "Hard workers, salt of the earth, but not scholars." He reached under the table and pulled out a leather portfolio. He opened it and slid a bank statement across the table. It was for a savings account I knew well, the Mercer Education Fund. It had been growing since I was a baby. The balance was $180,000. "This money," he said, tapping the paper with a manicured fingernail, This is an investment. You don't invest in a liability. You invest in a sure thing. He looked toward the living room where my 14-year-old brother Julian was playing video games. The sound of explosions and gunfire drifted into the dining room. "Julian," my father said, a warmth entering his voice that I had never heard directed at me. "Julian has the spark. He's quick. He's charming. He's going to be a surgeon. I can feel it." "He's getting C's in biology," I pointed out. "He failed algebra. He's bored," Dad snapped, slamming his hand on the table. "He's bored because the curriculum is too slow for him. He needs the right environment. That is why this fund, all of it, is going to Julian." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "All of it? But half of that is supposed to be mine." "It's my money," he said coldly, "and I'm deciding where it goes. I'm not going to throw away good money letting you flunk out of med school in your first semester. Be realistic, Elijah. You're not smart enough." He took a bite of steak, chewed and swallowed. "I spoke to Mr. Thomas down at the truck repair shop. He's looking for an apprentice. Good union job eventually. Grease, gears, heavy lifting. That's where you belong. Go fix cars, son. Stop dreaming." I looked at my mother. She was staring at her meatloaf, pushing peas around with her fork. "Mom," I asked. She didn't look up. "Your father knows best, Elijah. He's just trying to protect you from disappointment." That was the night I left. I packed a duffel bag. I took $50 from my dresser drawer. I walked out the front door, and I didn't look back. I didn't go to Mr. Thomas to accept my fate. I went to him to survive. For the next 4 years, I lived a double life. By day, I was exactly what my father said I was. I was covered in grease. I learned how to swap transmissions, how to bleed brake lines, how to feel the vibration of an engine to diagnose a misfire. My knuckles were perpetually busted, the skin stained with oil that no amount of scrubbing could remove. But by night, I was a ghost haunting the university library. I worked the graveyard shift at the front desk, checking in books for students who had parents paying their tuition. I read every book I checked in. I studied while they slept. I got into a state school on a partial scholarship and paid the rest by fixing engines on weekends. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter. I slept 4 hours a night. When I got into Johns Hopkins for medical school, I didn't tell them. When I graduated summa cum laude, top of my class, I sent them an invitation. Just one. My mother texted me back 2 days before the ceremony. "We can't make it, honey. Julian has a soccer tournament. We're so proud of you for finishing your certificate, though. Maybe you can open your own shop soon." Certificate. They thought I had finished trade school. I didn't correct them. I stood on that stage alone. No family cheering. No flowers. Just me and the dean, who shook my hand and whispered, "We expect great things from you, Dr. Mercer." Doctor. 12 years later, here I was, 34 years old, a board-certified cardiothoracic surgeon. I had rebuilt hearts that were basically ground beef. I had saved babies who were blue when they were born. I had patients fly in from Europe just to have me hold a scalpel over their chest. And my family? They still thought I was a mechanic. I could have told them. I could have rubbed their faces in it years ago. But silence became my shield. Every time they didn't ask, every time they assumed, it just confirmed what I knew. They didn't care. They didn't want to know the real me. They only wanted the version of me that made them feel superior. But tonight was different. Tonight was Julian's engagement. Julian, the golden child. The one who got the $180,000. The one who was supposed to be the surgeon. I walked through the revolving doors of the country club. The air conditioning hit me, chilling the sweat on the back of my neck. "Name?" the hostess asked, not looking up from her iPad. "Elijah Mercer." She scrolled, frowned, scrolled again. "I don't see." "Oh, here." It was added at the bottom. Table 19. "That's in the back, near the kitchen service doors." Of course it was. I walked into the ballroom. It was an ocean of tuxedos and glittering gowns. A string quartet was playing something by Mozart. Waiters drifted through the crowd with trays of champagne. I scanned the room for the happy couple. I saw Julian first. He was standing near the ice sculpture, holding court. He looked good, I'll give him that. Expensive suit, perfect hair, teeth whitened to a blinding degree. He was laughing, throwing his head back, looking every bit the successful doctor my father had paid for him to be. And then I saw her, the fiancée. I had only seen pictures on Facebook, usually heavily filtered. But seeing her in person stopped me dead in my tracks. She was standing next to Julian, wearing a white silk dress that hugged her frame. She had dark hair, pulled back in an elegant bun. She turned slightly to accept a glass of water from a waiter, and the light hit her profile. My heart hammered against my ribs. It wasn't attraction. It was recognition. I knew that face. I knew the curve of her jaw. I knew the way her neck dipped. But more than that, I knew the inside of her chest. 3 years ago, a rainy Tuesday night, a multi-car pileup on I-95. A Jane Doe brought in with a crushed sternum and a lacerated aorta. She had bled out twice on the table. I had stood over her for 7 hours, stitching, clamping, literally massaging her heart with my own hands to get it to beat again. I had saved her life. I stared at the bride-to-be, Sarah. Her name was Sarah Jenkins. Does she know? I wondered. Does Julian know? The last time I saw her, she was intubated in the ICU, her face swollen and bruised. I had checked on her rounds, but she was usually sedated. By the time she was discharged, I was at a conference in Zurich. I took a step forward, my hand instinctively going to the ring in my pocket again. This wasn't just an engagement party anymore. This was a collision course. My father was walking toward me. He moved like a shark in a tailored suit. He didn't smile. He looked at my shoes, then my tie, then my face. "You came," he said. It sounded like an accusation. "I came," I replied. "Congratulations, Dad." Julian seems happy. Arthur Mercer didn't care about happiness. He cared about optics. "Keep a low profile tonight, Elijah. We have important people here. The chief of staff from the hospital. Senators. Investors." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a hiss. "And for God's sake, don't tell anyone you fix trucks. If anyone asks, just say you're in logistics or consulting. Don't embarrass your brother. Tonight is about his success, not your mediocrity." I looked my father in the eye. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Instead, I just nodded. "Don't worry, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "I won't say a word about trucks." He patted my shoulder. A hard, dismissive tap. "Good. Go get a drink. Try not to spill it." He walked away, heading toward the VIP table. I watched him go. Then I looked back at Sarah. She was laughing at something Julian said, but her hand was resting absently on her chest, right over her sternum, right over the scar I gave her, the scar that let her live. I headed for the bar. I needed a water. I needed clarity, because I had a feeling that by the end of this night, the Mercer family secrets were going to be spilled all over this expensive marble floor. I navigated the ballroom like a shadow. That was my role, after all. The invisible son, the disappointment, the worker. The room was filled with the kind of people my father worshipped. Men with firm handshakes and soft hands. Women who wore jewelry that could pay off my mortgage. I overheard snippets of conversation as I passed. Market fluctuations. Golf handicaps. Summer homes in the Hamptons. "Elijah!" The voice was shrill and familiar. I winced before I turned around. It was Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, and the family's unofficial broadcaster of gossip. She was holding a martini that was mostly olive juice and judgment. "Aunt Carol," I said, forcing a polite smile. "Good to see you." She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my hands, then my suit. "Well, look at you, cleaning up nice. Did you rent the tux?" "I bought it, actually," I said. She laughed. A sharp, barking sound. "Oh, stop it. We all know how tight money is for people in your line of work. There's no shame in renting, Elijah. It's practical." She leaned in, her breath smelling of gin. Have you seen Julian? Isn't he magnificent? A doctor. Can you believe it? My sister is just beside herself. Finally, a professional in the family. Finally, I repeated, the word tasting like ash. And you? She poked my chest with a manicured finger. Still at that garage? What is it? Grease monkeys. It was a fleet repair center, Aunt Carol. And I haven't worked there in 12 years. She waved her hand dismissively. Whatever. Garage, fleet, it's all blue collar, isn't it? You know, I was telling my neighbor about you. Her roof is leaking. Maybe you can go over and fix it? You're handy, right? I'm not a roofer, Carol. Same difference. Manual labor. She took a sip of her drink, her eyes darting over my shoulder to someone more important. Just try not to get drunk tonight, okay? We don't need a scene. Julian has worked too hard for this. She bustled away before I could respond. I stood there, feeling the heat rise in my neck. It wasn't anger anymore. It was exhaustion. It was the crushing weight of being boxed into a reality that didn't exist. To them, I was a caricature, a prop in the background of Julian's movie. I made it to the bar and ordered a club soda with lime. The bartender, a guy about my age with tired eyes, nodded at me. Long night? He asked, sliding the glass across the sleek black counter. You have no idea, I muttered. I hear that. The father of the groom is a piece of work. He yelled at one of the servers earlier because the ice cubes weren't square. I snorted. Sounds like Arthur. You know him? Unfortunately, I'm the brother of the groom. The bartender raised an eyebrow. Really? You don't look like... Well, you seem normal. I'll take that as a compliment. I turned my back to the bar, scanning the room. My mother, Linda, was fluttering around the head table. She looked anxious. She always looked anxious at these events, terrified that a napkin might be folded wrong or a guest might be bored. She spotted me and immediately made a beeline for my corner. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. Her eyes were pleading. Elijah, she whispered. Thank you for coming. I know it's hard for you. It's not hard, Mom. I'm happy for Julian. That was a half-lie. I wanted to be happy for him. Listen, she said, pulling me further into the shadows. Your father, he's very stressed. He wants everything to be perfect. He told the Jenkins family, Sarah's parents, that Julian is the star of our family. I gathered that. He might have exaggerated a bit. About you. I looked at her. Exaggerated how? He told them you work in support services for a trucking company. Support services? I laughed humorlessly. Mom, I'm a surgeon. I reconstruct human hearts. Why is that something you need to hide? Shoo! She looked around frantically. Please, Elijah, don't start. You know how Julian is. He needs to feel special. He's always been sensitive. If you start talking about your job, he'll feel threatened. You know he struggled in med school. Struggled? I asked. Mom, did he even finish? I haven't seen his name on any residency match lists. I checked the databases. Her face went pale. Of course he finished. He's just taking a gap year to focus on research and the pharmaceutical industry. He's consulting. It's very prestigious. She was lying. I could see it in the tremor of her lip. She knew, or at least she suspected, and she was choosing blindness. Just like she chose blindness when Dad kicked me out. Mom, I said gently, you're enabling him. You've been enabling him his whole life. I'm protecting this family, she hissed, tears forming in her eyes. Just be invisible tonight, Elijah. Please. For me, just be his brother. Not the competition. I'm not his competition, Mom. I'm his brother. She squeezed my arm one last time and hurried back to the spotlight. I watched her go, feeling a hollow ache in my chest. Be invisible. That was my inheritance. I turned back to the room and saw the couple moving toward the dance floor for photos. Sarah was glowing. She looked healthy, vibrant. It was a miracle, really. When she came into my ER, her chest was crushed. We had to crack her open right there in the trauma bay because her pericardium was filling with blood. I remembered her eyes, just before the anesthesia took her under. They were terrified. She had grabbed my scrub top, her bloody fingers leaving streaks on the blue fabric. "Please," she had wheezed. "I'm getting married. Don't let me die." I had promised her she wouldn't. And now here she was, getting married to my brother. She looked up, and for a second, her eyes locked with mine across the crowded room. She frowned slightly. She tilted her head. I saw her lips move. She said something to Julian, gesturing toward me. Julian looked over. His smile faltered for a microsecond. Then he pasted it back on. He whispered something in her ear, laughed, and pulled her toward a group of investors. She let him pull her away, but she looked back over her shoulder at me one more time. There was confusion in her gaze, a flicker of a memory trying to surface. My heart rate picked up. If she recognized me, if she put two and two together. But then, a man in a gray suit stepped in front of me, blocking my view. "Excuse me," he said. He was holding a plate of hors d'oeuvres. "Are you the staff? Can you take this plate? I'm done with it." I looked at the plate. Shrimp tails and a used napkin. Then I looked at the man. He wasn't trying to be rude. He just assumed. Because I was standing alone. Because I wasn't wearing a Rolex. Because I had that invisible aura my family loved so much. I took the plate. "Sure," I said. "I'll take care of it." "Thanks, buddy," he said, and walked away. I walked over to a trash can and dumped the plate. I stared at my reflection in the darkened window glass. "You're a world-class surgeon," I told myself. "You save lives." But in this room, under the weight of my father's narrative, I was just the help. I checked my phone. I had a text from Dr. Marcus Vance, a colleague of mine at Hopkins. I had texted him earlier, asking him to do a little digging into Dr. Julian Mercer. The text read, "Elijah, you need to see this." I pulled the state medical board records and the residency match data. "Call me when you can. It's worse than you think." I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Worse than I thought? I looked across the room at Julian, who was clinking glasses with a senator, looking like the king of the world. "What did you do, Julian?" I whispered to the glass. I was about to find out. And the invisible sun was about to become very, very visible. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. The message from Marcus was burning a hole through the fabric. Worse than you think. I needed to know, but this wasn't the place to make a call. The ballroom was getting louder. Laughter, clinking crystal, the hum of expensive conversation. "Elijah!" I braced myself. It was the golden child himself. Julian was striding toward me, a glass of scotch in one hand and his fiancée, Sarah, on his arm. Up close, the difference between us was stark. I was broad-shouldered, built from years of lifting engine blocks and then standing for 12-hour surgeries. Julian was slender, soft, manicured. He looked like a model for a yacht catalog. "Hey, big brother." Julian's voice was too loud, too performative. He slapped me on the back. "Glad you could make it. I know it's a trek from... Where are you living now?" "That apartment complex near the highway." He knew exactly where I lived. I had a penthouse in downtown Baltimore, 5 minutes from the hospital. But to him, I was still the struggling mechanic. "I made it fine, Julian," I said, keeping my hands in my pockets. "Congratulations." Thanks. He beamed, holding up his glass. "It's been a whirlwind. You know how it is. Or, well, maybe you don't." He chuckled. "This is Sarah. Babe, this is Elijah, the brother I told you about." Sarah stepped forward. Her eyes were warm, but searching. She extended a hand. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Elijah. Julian talks about you. Occasionally." There was a hesitation in her voice. Occasionally. Meaning when he needed a punchline. I took her hand. Her grip was firm. "It's nice to meet you too, Sarah. You look healthy, radiant." She smiled, touching her chest reflexively. "Thank you. I feel lucky to be here." Literally. Sarah had a bit of a scare a few years ago, Julian interjected, puffing out his chest. Car accident. Nasty business. But she's a fighter. And now she's marrying a doctor, so she's in good hands, right? He squeezed her waist possessively. Sarah smiled up at him, adoringly. I really am. Julian takes such good care of me. So, Julian, I said, deciding to test the waters. How's the residency going? Mom said you're doing consulting? Julian's eyes flickered, a tiny twitch at the corner of his mouth. Oh, the grind. I finished my clinical rotations, obviously, top of the class, but I decided to pivot. Clinical medicine is so limiting. I'm working with Pfizer now, on the development side, spearheading some new cardiac protocols. Cardiac protocols? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Really? What kind? Are you focusing on pharmacological interventions for arrhythmia? Or maybe postoperative anticoagulation therapies? Julian blinked. The smile froze on his face. Yeah, exactly. The anti-thing. The blood stuff. It's very high level. Proprietary. Can't discuss details. NDA? Right? I said. NDA. It's fascinating work, Sarah chimed in, trying to support him. He's always on calls with hospitals. He travels so much. He's so dedicated. I bet, I said. Julian looked uncomfortable. He checked his Rolex. Actually, Elijah, I wanted to ask you, Dad mentioned you might need a little help with. He made a rubbing motion with his thumb and fingers. Money. For rent or whatever. I stared at him. I don't need money, Julian. Come on, don't be proud. I'm doing really well. The bonuses are insane. I can write you a check. Consider it a gift. For fixing my bike when we were kids. He laughed, looking around to see if anyone was admiring his generosity. I'm fine, I said, my voice hardening. Okay. Suit yourself. Just trying to help the little people. He winked. Oh hey, is that Mr. Henderson? I need to go say hi. He's on the board of directors. Big connections. He started to pull Sarah away. Wait, Sarah said. She didn't move. She was staring at me again. Her brow was furrowed. Elijah, your voice is driving me crazy. Do you volunteer at the hospital? Or maybe, were you an EMT? My heart stopped. She was getting close. No, Julian cut in sharply. Babe, Elijah works on trucks. He fixes diesel engines. He's not in medicine. He passes out at the sight of blood. Remember when he cut his finger on Thanksgiving? Cried like a baby. That was a lie. I had never cried over a cut. But, Sarah narrowed her eyes. I could have sworn. It's just a common voice, babe, Julian said, tugging her arm harder. Come on. Mr. Henderson is waiting. Sarah looked at me one last time, confusion clouding her features. It was nice meeting you, Elijah. You too, Sarah. They walked away. As soon as they were out of earshot, I pulled out my phone. I couldn't wait anymore. I headed for the side exit, pushing through the heavy velvet curtains onto a quiet terrace. I dialed Marcus. Mercer, Marcus answered on the first ring. You are not going to believe this. Tell me, I said, leaning against the stone railing. The night air was cool, but I was sweating. Okay, so I ran Julian Mercer through the National Provider Identifier database. Nothing. No NPI number, which means he can't practice medicine. Then I called a buddy of mine in the registrar's office at the med school your dad said he went to. And he was enrolled, Marcus said, for 2 years. Then he was dismissed. Dismissed. Academic dishonesty, Elijah. He got caught buying papers. And, get this, he forged a signature on a clinical evaluation. He was kicked out, expelled. He never graduated. He is not a doctor. He doesn't even have a bachelor's degree in science because the expulsion voided his credits. I closed my eyes. He's been lying for 2 years? It gets better. Or worse, you said he works for Pfizer. That's what he claims. I checked LinkedIn. He is listed as a junior sales representative, but not for Pfizer corporate. He's a contract worker for a third-party vendor that stocks sample closets. Elijah, he's a delivery boy. He drives a van and drops off boxes of antacids and erectile dysfunction samples to doctors' offices. He's not spearheading protocols. He's restocking shelves. I let out a long breath. The money. Where is he getting the money? The Porsche? The Rolex? This wedding? That, I don't know, Marcus said. But on a contract sales rep salary? No way. He makes maybe $45K a year. $50K tops. My father. It had to be my father. Thanks, Marcus. I said. I owe you one. Elijah, what are you going to do? I don't know yet. If he's practicing medicine without a license. If he's giving medical advice to that girl. He's not practicing, I said. He's just playing dress-up. But he's marrying her under false pretenses. I hung up. I stood there in the dark, looking at the glowing windows of the ballroom. Inside, my brother was playing the role of the successful surgeon, a role he had stolen from me, a role my father had bought for him, and when Julian failed to earn it, my father had simply bought the costume instead. I thought about Sarah. I'm marrying a doctor, so I'm in good hands. She was marrying a fraud. A guy who got kicked out for cheating. A guy who couldn't diagnose a cold, let alone manage her complex cardiac history. I felt a surge of anger so pure it almost knocked me over. It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't about the $180,000 tuition. It was about the danger, the disrespect, the sheer audacity of the lie. The door to the terrace opened. I turned. It wasn't Julian. It wasn't my dad. It was William Thorne. My jaw dropped slightly. William Thorne was a legend. He was on the board of trustees for Johns Hopkins. He was a billionaire philanthropist who had funded the new cardiac wing. I had operated on his granddaughter 6 months ago. He was lighting a cigar. He saw me and stopped. He squinted in the dim light. Then, his face broke into a wide, genuine smile. "Dr. Mercer?" he boomed. "Is that you?" He walked over, hand extended. "I didn't know you were a club member. I thought you lived in the OR." I shook his hand. "Mr. Thorne, good evening. I'm not a member. I'm just visiting." "Nonsense." He clamped a hand on my shoulder. "It is so good to see you. My granddaughter, Lily, she's running track now. Can you believe it? 6 months post-op and she's running track. You are a wizard, Elijah. A wizard." "I just did my job, sir." "Modesty," he chuckled. "I love it. Listen, I've been meaning to call you. The board wants to offer you the chair of the department. I know you're young, but you're the best we have. The salary package is, well, let's just say it's 7 figures. And full tenure. 7 figures. Chair of the department. That's incredible, sir. Thank you." "Don't thank me. You earned it." He looked at my tuxedo. "So, who are you here for? Some fancy gala?" "My brother," I said. "It's his engagement party." "Oh, wonderful. Is he a doctor too?" Before I could answer, the terrace door banged open. My father stormed out. He looked furious. "Elijah," he barked. "What are you doing out here? You're missing the toasts. And stop bothering the guests." He looked at Mr. Thorne and his face changed instantly from rage to sycophantic charm. "Oh, Mr. Thorne, I am so sorry. Is this person bothering you?" I told him to stay by the service entrance. Mr. Thorne looked at my father, then at me, then back at my father. He looked confused. "Bothering me? Arthur, do you know Dr. Mercer?" My father laughed. A nervous, condescending laugh. "Dr. Mercer? Oh, you must be mistaken. This is my son, Elijah. He's a mechanic. He works on trucks." Mr. Thorne froze. He took the cigar out of his mouth. He looked at me. "Elijah? A mechanic?" I looked at my father. I saw the fear in his eyes. He was terrified I would speak. He was terrified the illusion would shatter. Dad, I said quietly. Shut up, Elijah, he hissed. Go inside. Now. Mr. Thorne straightened up. His demeanor went from friendly to icy cold. He looked at Arthur Mercer like he was something he had stepped in. Arthur, Mr. Thorne said, his voice low and dangerous. Are you telling me that you think the man who saved my granddaughter's life, the man who is the finest cardiothoracic surgeon on the East Coast, is a mechanic? My father's mouth opened and closed. What? No, you're confused. My son Julian is the doctor. Elijah is slow. He's the disappointment. Mr. Thorne dropped his cigar. He stepped closer to my father. If this man is a disappointment, Thorne said, pointing at me, then you are the blindest fool I have ever met. The air on the terrace was electric. My father looked like he was having a stroke. I don't understand, my father whispered. No, I said, stepping forward. You don't, but you're about to. I turned to Mr. Thorne. Sir, excuse me. I think it's time for the speeches. I walked back into the ballroom. The velvet lie was ripping apart, and I was about to pull the whole thing down. I walked away from the terrace, leaving my father and William Thorne in a stunned standoff. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from a strange, cold adrenaline. It was the same feeling I got right before I made the first incision in a high-risk surgery. Controlled chaos. I went straight to the bathroom. I needed 30 seconds. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. For 12 years, I had played the role they assigned me. I had nodded when they called me slow. I had stayed silent when they mocked my dirty hands. I had done it because deep down, a part of me, the little boy who just wanted his dad to be proud, hoped that if I was humble enough, if I worked hard enough, they would eventually see me. But they never looked. They only looked at what they wanted to see. My phone buzzed again. It was a notification from my bank. My direct deposit had hit. My salary from the hospital. It was a number my father would envy, even with his executive bonuses. I dried my hands. The paper towel was rough. Those are workers' hands, my father had said. He was right. They were workers' hands. And tonight they were going to work. I exited the bathroom and stepped back into the ballroom. The atmosphere had shifted. The lights were dimmed. A spotlight was sweeping across the floor, searching for the stage. The DJ was fading out the music. It was speech time. I saw my mother near the cake. She was wringing her hands, looking toward the terrace door where my father was presumably still being chewed out by a billionaire. I moved to the back of the room, near the sound booth. I wanted a wide view. My father entered the room a moment later. He looked shaken. His face was pale, his tie slightly crooked. He scanned the room frantically until his eyes landed on me. He glared, a look of pure venom. But he couldn't do anything. He had a speech to give. He smoothed his jacket, put on his executive mask, and walked up the steps to the stage. He took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, his voice boomed, slightly shaky but gaining strength. If I could have your attention. The room quieted. 150 faces turned toward him. Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate my son, Julian, and his beautiful fiancée, Sarah. Applause. Julian stood up at the head table, waving like a prince. Sarah smiled, but she looked tired. She rubbed her chest again. You know, my father continued, getting into his rhythm. When you raise children, you make investments. You pour your heart, your soul, and yes, your money, into their futures. Laughter from the crowd. I remember when Julian was born. I looked at him and I said, this boy is going to be special. And I was right. He has exceeded every expectation. He navigated the grueling path of medical school with grace. He is now embarking on a career that will save lives, change the world. I crossed my arms. Lies. We have always been a family of excellence, Dad said, his eyes flicking to the back of the room, trying to find me in the shadows. We don't settle for mediocrity. We don't settle for manual labor. A few people chuckled nervously. They knew the dig was directed at someone, even if they didn't know who. Julian, Dad said, raising his glass. You are the pride of the Mercer name. You are our only successful child. You are the return on our investment. Our only successful child. The words hung in the air. I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was William Thorne. He had followed us inside. He was standing right next to me, his face red with anger. Did he just say what I think he said? Thorne whispered. Watch, I said softly. And to Sarah, Dad continued. Welcome to the family. You are marrying a doctor, provider, a man of status. Julian stood up to hug his father. The spotlight hit them. It was a perfect picture. The wealthy father, the doctor's son. And then it happened. The spotlight drifted slightly. It hit the head table where Sarah was sitting. She was reaching for her water glass. The light caught something metallic on the table. Wait, no, it wasn't on the table. I wasn't looking at Sarah. Sarah was looking at me. I realized I was standing in the line of sight between the stage and the back exit. I had taken my hand out of my pocket. I was holding my glass of water. And on my finger, gleaming under the stray beam of the spotlight, was my ring. The Johns Hopkins ring. The gold was polished. The onyx stone was black as night. Sarah froze. Her eyes locked onto the ring. I saw the memory hit her like a physical blow. Flashback. The trauma bay. The bright lights. A hand holding hers. A gold ring with a black stone right in front of her face as the doctor leaned in. I'm Dr. Mercer. I've got you. Sarah stood up. She did it so abruptly her chair screeched against the floor. The room went silent. Dad stopped talking. Julian looked confused. Sarah? Julian asked. Babe, are you okay? Sarah didn't look at him. She was staring at me across the darkened room. Her hand covered her mouth. She was trembling. It's you, she whispered. But in the silence it carried. She stepped away from the table. She walked past Julian. She walked past my father. She walked down the steps of the stage. The crowd parted. They turned to see what she was looking at. She walked straight toward me. My father leaned into the mic. Sarah? Where are you going? The toast isn't done. She ignored him. She stopped 3 feet in front of me. She looked at my face, then at my ring, then back at my face. Tears were streaming down her cheeks. The voice, she said, her voice shaking. It was you. In the trauma room. You told me. You told me you would fix my heart. I looked at her. I didn't hide anymore. I did, I said softly. It was a difficult repair, Sarah. Your aorta was dissected. But you were strong. She let out a sob. You saved my life. I did my job. But... She turned around, looking back at the stage where Julian and my father stood frozen. They told me you were a mechanic. They told me Julian was the doctor. She looked at Julian. Julian? You told me you were on rounds that night. You told me you checked on me. Julian was pale. I did. I called the nurse station. No, Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. She pointed at me. This is Dr. Mercer. This is the man who operated on me. I remember the ring. She turned to the crowd. She grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, but she didn't drink it. She held it up like a weapon. Everyone, she shouted. Her voice echoed in the ballroom. My future father-in-law just told you that Julian is the only successful child. He told you Julian is a doctor. She pointed at me again. But this man, the one they call a failure, the one they made sit in the back, he is the surgeon who saved my life 3 years ago. The room erupted. Whispers turned into shouts. My father shouted into the mic. She's hysterical. She's confused. Elijah is a liar. He bought a fake ring. I sighed. I reached into my jacket pocket. I pulled out my phone. Mr. Thorne, I called out. William Thorne stepped forward, right next to me. He looked at the crowd. I am William Thorne, he announced, his voice commanding instant silence. Board of Trustees, Johns Hopkins Medicine. And I can verify that Dr. Elijah Mercer is not a liar. He is the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at our hospital. And he is 10 times the man his father is. My father dropped the microphone. It hit the floor with a deafening screech of feedback. But I wasn't done. I looked at Julian. Your turn, little brother, I said. Tell them. The feedback from the dropped microphone died down, leaving a silence so heavy it felt like it could crush the building. All eyes were on Julian. He looked like a cornered animal. Sweat was beading on his forehead, glistening under the stage lights. He tugged at his collar. Tell them what? Julian stammered, his voice thin without the mic. That you're jealous? That you're trying to ruin my night? He tried to laugh, looking around for support. Everyone, please. My brother. He has delusions. He's always been mentally unstable. Stop it, Julian, Sarah said. Her voice was ice cold. She stood between us, a bride turned prosecutor. Mr. Thorne just confirmed who he is. Are you calling the board of trustees a liar too? Julian opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I stepped forward. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. Julian, show them your medical license. It's in my office, he deflected. Show them your hospital ID badge. I left it in the car. Show them your NPI number. Every doctor has one. It's public record. Tell us the number, Julian. Silence. I held up my phone. I had connected it to the wireless casting system for the ballroom's projector, a trick I learned from the AV guy when I handed him the tip earlier to ensure the slideshow worked. If you won't tell them, I will. I tapped the screen. The massive projection screen behind the stage, which was displaying a photo of Julian and Sarah in Paris, flickered. Changed. It was now showing the National Student Clearinghouse record. This, I said, pointing to the screen, is Julian's academic transcript. Enrolled 2014. Dismissed 2016. Reason: academic dishonesty and forgery. Gasps rippled through the room. My mother let out a wail from the side of the stage. I swiped the screen. Next image. And this, I continued, is his current employment record. Not a doctor. Not a consultant for Pfizer. He is a junior logistics coordinator for a third-party delivery service. His salary is $42,000 a year. I looked at my father. He was gripping the podium so hard his knuckles were white. You said he was an investment, Dad. You said you spent $180,000 on his tuition. Where did it go? I swiped again. This wasn't a document I had found. It was a photo from Julian's own public Instagram, dated 3 years ago. It was Julian standing next to a brand new Porsche. Caption: tuition money well spent. Hashtag medschool dropout. Hashtag living the life. He had tagged it as a joke. But now, on a 20-foot screen, it wasn't funny. He blew it, I said to the crowd. He blew the college fund on cars, watches, and trips. And for 2 years, he has been pretending to be a doctor to get into this club, to impress these investors, and to trick this woman into marrying him. I turned to Sarah. She was looking at the screen, horrified. He's not a surgeon, Sarah, I said gently. He's never held a scalpel. He delivers free samples of heartburn medication. Sarah turned slowly to face Julian. The look on her face wasn't anger. It was disgust. Pure, unadulterated revulsion. Is it true? She asked. Julian's facade cracked. He crumbled. Babe, listen. I was going to go back. I was just taking a break. The money. Dad said I could have it. Dad said it was mine to do what I wanted. Dad. Sarah looked at Arthur. Arthur Mercer straightened up, trying to regain some shred of dignity. Now hold on. Julian he is finding his path. We supported him because we believe in his potential. Unlike Elijah, who... Stop! Sarah screamed. Stop talking about Elijah. Elijah is a hero. Elijah saved my life. You are a fraud. She looked down at her hand. The engagement ring. A massive diamond. Who paid for this ring, Julian? She asked. Did you buy this with your delivery boy salary? Julian looked at his feet. I bought it, my father said, his voice sullen. I bought the ring. Of course you did, Sarah said. She pulled the ring off her finger. She didn't hand it back. She threw it. It hit Julian in the chest and bounced onto the floor. "I can't marry you," she said. "I can't believe I almost married a man I don't even know." "Sarah, please." Julian lunged for her arm. "Think about the guests. Think about the wedding deposit. Don't touch me." She stepped back, right next to me. She looked up at me, tears swimming in her eyes, but she smiled. "Dr. Mercer," she said, "can you get me out of here?" "I'd be happy to," I said. I offered her my arm. She took it. We turned to walk out. The path was clear. People were staring at us with awe. "Elijah!" My father's voice roared from the stage. It was a primal scream of rage. "You ungrateful bastard! You ruined this family. You destroyed your brother's life." I stopped. I turned around one last time. "No, Dad," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "I didn't ruin anything. I just turned on the lights." "Get out!" he screamed. "Get out and don't come back. You are cut off. You hear me? You get nothing." I laughed. It was a genuine laugh. "Dad," I said, "I make 10 times what you make. I don't need your money. I never did. Keep it. You're going to need it to pay for Julian's therapy." I walked out of the ballroom with the bride on my arm, leaving my father and brother in the wreckage of their own lies. The heavy double doors of the country club swung shut behind us, muting the chaos inside. The silence of the night air felt like a physical weight being lifted off my shoulders. Sarah was trembling against my arm. "Are you okay?" I asked gently. She let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. "I don't know. I feel light and stupid. God, I feel so stupid. How did I not see it?" "They're good at what they do," I said. "They've had a lifetime of practice. My father creates the reality he wants, and everyone else just has to live in it." "He didn't know a P wave from a T wave," she muttered, shaking her head. Whenever I asked about work, he got defensive. I thought it was stress. I thought he was just burned out. "He was stressed," I said. "Lying is a full-time job." We reached the curb. The valet stand was empty. The attendants were probably all inside watching the drama unfold. My Uber was long gone. "I can call you a car," I said. "No," she said. "My parents are inside. I should wait for them. They're going to be furious." "At you?" "No. Julian. My dad. He wrote a check for the wedding. A big one." She winced. Just then, the doors burst open again. It wasn't her parents. It was my mother. Linda Mercer looked like she had aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Her mascara was running. She ran toward us, her heels clicking frantically on the pavement. "Elijah!" "Sarah, wait!" I stepped in front of Sarah, shielding her. "Mom, don't. Go back inside." "Elijah, please!" she sobbed, grabbing my lapel. "You have to go back in there. You have to tell them it was a joke, a misunderstanding. Tell them Julian is... Tell them something." "Mom," I said, peeling her fingers off my suit. "It's over. The truth is out." "You don't understand," she wailed. "You've destroyed us. The house. The house is gone." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" She slumped against a concrete planter, covering her face. "We mortgaged the house, twice, to pay for Julian's tuition, to buy the Porsche, to pay for this party. Your father, he leveraged everything. He said once Julian was a doctor, he'd pay it all back. He said it was an investment." I stared at her. The $180,000 hadn't been enough. They had bet the entire farm on a horse that wasn't even running the race. "You're broke?" I asked. "Worse than broke," she whispered. "We're in debt up to our eyeballs. If Julian doesn't marry Sarah, her parents were going to help with the down payment on a house for them. We were going to use that to pay the back taxes." I felt a wave of nausea. "You were selling him off? You were using Sarah as a bailout?" Sarah gasped behind me. "Oh my God, that's why he proposed so fast. That's why he pushed for a short engagement." My mother looked up, her eyes pleading with Sarah. "Sarah, honey, he loves you. He really does. We can work this out. Julian can get a real job. Elijah can help us. Elijah is rich now. He can fix this. She looked at me with sudden hope. Elijah, you're the chief of surgery. You have millions. You can pay off the mortgage. You can save your brother. Please, do it for the family. I looked at this woman who had watched my father belittle me for decades. This woman who had asked me to be invisible tonight. This woman who had just admitted they tried to trap a patient I saved into a fraudulent marriage to pay their debts. No, I said. The word hung there solid and heavy. What? She whispered. No, I won't pay the mortgage. I won't pay Julian's debts. And I certainly won't help you trick Sarah back into this mess. But, your family, she cried. We're your parents. You're Arthur and Linda, I said coldly. My parents died the night you told me to go fix cars because I wasn't smart enough to be your son. I turned to Sarah. Here come your parents. The Jenkins family was storming out of the exit, looking like a lynch mob. Her father spotted Sarah and ran over, hugging her. We're leaving, Mr. Jenkins said, glaring at my mother. And you will be hearing from our lawyer regarding the venue costs. Sarah pulled away from her dad and looked at me. She reached out and took my hand. She squeezed it the same way I had squeezed hers in the trauma bay. Thank you, Elijah, she said, for saving me. Again. Take care of yourself, Sarah, I said. She got into her parents' car. I watched them drive away. My mother was still sobbing on the curb. The door opened one last time. My father came out. He looked defeated. His shoulders were slumped. He saw me standing there. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just looked at me with a mixture of fear and confusion. Elijah, he croaked. The investors. Thorne. They all left. I imagine they did, I said. They're talking about fraud, he whispered. Elijah, you have to speak to Thorne. Tell him it was a mistake. I checked my watch. I can't do that, Arthur. I have rounds in the morning. Real doctors work weekends. I pulled out my phone and summoned another Uber. You're leaving? He asked, his voice trembling. You're leaving us like this? I'm going home, I said. To my life. The one I built with my own hands. My Uber arrived. It was a Honda Civic this time. Not a Rolls-Royce. Not a Porsche. Just a car. I opened the door. Elijah, my father called out. I'm your father. I paused. I looked back at him, standing next to his weeping wife and his rented luxury car, in front of a club he could no longer afford. I know, I said, and I hope one day you can afford to be proud of that. I got in the car. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw them standing there, shrinking into the distance, two small figures under the massive white pillars of a castle built on sand. I touched the ring in my pocket one last time. Then I took it out and slid it onto my finger. Fit perfectly. The Monday morning after the engagement party, I didn't wake up to a hangover. I woke up to silence. For the first time in my life, the crushing weight of my family's expectations was gone. I sat on the edge of my bed in my downtown apartment, looking out at the Baltimore skyline. I drank my coffee black. I put on my scrubs. I didn't have to hide them in a gym bag anymore. I didn't have to pretend I was putting on coveralls to go slide under a semi-truck. I was Dr. Elijah Mercer, and everyone knew it. But silence, I learned quickly, doesn't last long when a bomb has just gone off. By 10 a.m., while I was prepping for a mitral valve repair, my phone had 17 missed calls. 5 from my mother, 3 from Julian, 9 from numbers I didn't recognize, which I assumed were debt collectors or panic-dialing relatives. I handed my phone to the charge nurse. Put it in the locker, I said. If it's not the hospital administrator or a patient emergency, I'm not here. Rough weekend? She asked, eyeing the screen as another call from Dad lit it up. You could say that, I replied. I just performed an amputation. I cut off a dead limb to save the body. She didn't ask what I meant. She just nodded and took the phone. The real fallout didn't hit me until 3 days later. I was sitting in my office, reviewing charts, when my administrative assistant buzzed me. "Dr. Mercer? There's a woman here to see you. She says she's your mother. She doesn't have an appointment, and she's crying. Security is asking if they should escort her out." I sighed, rubbing my temples. I could have said yes. I could have let security drag her out. But Linda Mercer was still the woman who used to sneak me sandwiches when Dad sent me to bed without dinner. "Send her up," I said. "But give us 10 minutes. Only 10. When my mother walked into my office, she looked small. The country club veneer was gone. She was wearing a tracksuit and no makeup. She looked around the room. At the mahogany desk, the framed diplomas, the view of the harbor with wide, terrified eyes. She sat down without being asked. She didn't look at me. She looked at her hands. "They're taking the house, Elijah," she whispered. I leaned back in my chair. "I assumed they would. You said you mortgaged it twice." "The bank gave us 30 days," she continued, her voice trembling. "Your father, he tried to call his friends, the investors, the ones at the party. And none of them will take his call. Mr. Thorne, he apparently sent a memo to the business community. Something about ethical concerns regarding your father's business practices. Arthur has been blacklisted. Elijah. He's finished." I felt a pang of pity, but it was distant, like watching a car crash on the news. "He lied to the wrong people, Mom. He tried to con a billionaire and the chief of surgery in the same night. What did he expect?" "And the Jenkins family," she sobbed. "Sarah's parents. They are suing Julian. For the cost of the wedding. For emotional distress. They want $80,000, Elijah. We don't have $80, let alone 80,000. She looked up at me then, and I saw the desperation. It was the look of a drowning woman reaching for a life raft. "You have to help us," she said. "I know you're angry. I know we made mistakes. But we are your family. You can't let us lose the house. You can't let Julian go to jail for fraud." "Julian isn't going to jail," I said calmly. "It's a civil suit. He'll just be bankrupt. As for the house, Mom, that house was never a home. It was a stage set for Dad's ego." "Where will we go?" she wailed. "Your father is 62 years old. He can't start over." I opened my drawer and pulled out a checkbook. My mother's eyes lit up. She sat up straighter, expecting the bailout. Expecting the 6-figure check that would make the nightmare go away. I wrote a check. I tore it out and slid it across the desk. She grabbed it. Then she stopped. Her face fell. $5,000? She whispered. "Elijah, the mortgage arrears alone are $40,000. This won't even cover the movers. That is first and last month's rent on a 2-bedroom apartment in Glen Burnie," I said. "It's a decent area. Safe. Affordable. I checked the listings this morning." "An apartment?" She looked at me like I had slapped her. "You want us to live in an apartment? Like poor people?" "You are poor people, Mom," I said, my voice hard. "You have no assets. You have massive debt. You have a son who refuses to work. You are poor. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can survive it." She crumbled the check in her hand. "How can you be so cruel? You make millions. I saw your salary on the internet. You could buy us a new house and not even feel it." "I could," I agreed. "But I won't, because if I pay off your debt, Dad will just mortgage the new house to buy Julian a new car. If I bail you out, Julian will never learn to stand on his own 2 feet. I'm not being cruel, Mom. I'm doing the one thing you and Dad never did for Julian. I'm teaching him consequences." I stood up. "The check is valid for 30 days. If you don't want it, tear it up. But that is the only money you will ever get from me." She stared at me for a long time. Then, slowly, she smoothed out the crumpled check. She put it in her purse. She stood up, her dignity in tatters. "You really are your father's son," she spat, cold as ice. "No, Mom," I said as she walked to the door. "I'm the surgeon you needed. Sometimes you have to break a bone to reset it properly." She left. I sat back down and stared at the empty chair. It hurt. Of course it hurt. But for the first time, the pain felt clean. It wasn't the rotting infection of a lie. It was the sharp, healing pain of a necessary amputation. The next few weeks were a blur of legal paperwork and rumors. I didn't speak to them, but Baltimore is a small city. I heard things. I heard that the Porsche 911 GT3 was repossessed from the driveway in broad daylight. The neighbors, who Arthur had spent years trying to impress, apparently watched from their lawns with popcorn. I heard that Julian tried to fight the lawsuit by claiming he had a verbal contract with Sarah's father for the money. The judge reportedly laughed him out of court. And then I heard about the job. It was a Tuesday evening when my phone rang. It was Marcus Vance. "Elijah," he said, sounding amused. "You are never going to guess who my cousin just hired." "I'm afraid to ask," I said, stirring pasta in my kitchen. "So, my cousin runs a logistics warehouse down by the port. Amazon fulfillment, that kind of thing. He needed guys for the night shift. Loading trucks. Heavy lifting." I stopped stirring. "No." "Yes," Marcus laughed. "Julian Mercer. He started last night. My cousin said he showed up in a suit for the interview. A suit. For a warehouse job. He tried to negotiate a management position because of his medical background. My cousin told him he could either lift boxes or leave. And he's lifting boxes. Apparently, he needs the money to pay the settlement with the Jenkins family to avoid court." I hung up the phone and walked to the window. I looked out at the city lights. Julian, the golden child. The boy who was too smart for manual labor. The boy who was given $180,000 so he would never have to sweat. He was now doing the exact job my father had mocked me for. He was working with his hands. He was sweating in a warehouse. Karma didn't just bite. Swallowed you whole. I thought I would feel triumphant. I thought I would feel a surge of, "I told you so." But honestly, I just felt relief. The universe had finally corrected the balance. The lie was dead. My brother was finally, for the first time in his life, facing reality. It might break him or it might make him a man. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I went back to my stove. I plated my pasta. I poured a glass of wine. I sat down at my table in my quiet, paid-for apartment, and I ate dinner in peace. The next day, the for sale sign went up on my parents' lawn. It was a foreclosure sale. A week later, a moving truck, a budget rental, not a professional service, pulled up. I didn't go to help. I didn't send money for movers. I heard later that my father stood on the sidewalk, watching the movers load his leather armchair, crying. Not because he was losing his home, but because the neighbors could see his failure. Even at the end, it was all about the image. But the image was gone. All that was left was the truth. And the truth was a 2-bedroom apartment in Glen Burnie and a son loading trucks at midnight. 6 months. That's how long it takes for a heart to fully heal after major surgery. The sternum knits back together. The scar tissue settles. The rhythm stabilizes. It had been 6 months since the engagement party. I was sitting in a small coffee shop near the Inner Harbor. It was a crisp autumn day. The leaves were turning gold and red, reflecting off the water. I had a rare Saturday off. No pager. No emergency calls. Just a book and a latte. "Is this seat taken?" I looked up. Standing there, holding 2 cups of coffee, was Sarah. She looked different. Her hair was cut shorter, framing her face. She wasn't wearing the heavy makeup or the stiff designer clothes she wore when she was with Julian. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater. She looked younger, lighter. "Sarah," I said, standing up, "it's yours." She sat down and slid one of the cups toward me. "Black, 2 sugars." I remembered. "You have a good memory," I smiled. "Better than some," she quipped, a shadow crossing her face for a split second before she shook it off. "So, Dr. Mercer, how is the chief of surgery life treating you?" "Busy," I said, "but good. Honest. How are you?" She took a sip of her coffee. "I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I got my own apartment. I started painting again. I stopped trying to be the perfect doctor's wife and started being just Sarah." "That sounds like an upgrade." I said. It is. She looked me in the eye. I went to see a therapist, Elijah. We talked a lot about why I ignored the red flags. Why I let myself believe the fairy tale. We all want to believe in fairy tales, Sarah. Especially when we've been through trauma. You wanted safety. Julian offered an illusion of it. Yeah, she sighed. But illusions shatter. You taught me that. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. I wanted to give you this. It's not much. But I wanted you to have it. I opened the envelope. It was a donation receipt. A donation to the Johns Hopkins Cardiac Unit in my name. It wasn't a huge amount, but I knew for a young woman starting over it was significant. Sarah, you didn't have to do this. Yes, I did, she said firmly. You saved my life twice, Elijah. Once on the table and once in that ballroom. If you hadn't shown that slide, if you hadn't stood up, I would have married him. I would have tied my life to an anchor. This is just... thank you. We sat there for an hour, talking about everything and nothing. We didn't talk about Julian. We didn't talk about my parents. They were ghosts in the story now, fading into the background. When we walked out of the coffee shop, the sun was shining. I heard he's working at the port, Sarah said suddenly, looking at the water. He is, I said. Do you think he'll change? I thought about it. I thought about the text I had received from my mother the week before. A picture of a modest birthday cake she had baked for Dad, with a caption, "We're getting by. Julian is tired, but he's paying his share of the rent." I don't know, I admitted. Change is hard. It requires admitting you were wrong. My family, they aren't great at that. But for the first time, he has to earn his keep. Maybe that's enough. Sarah hugged me. It wasn't a romantic hug. It was the embrace of two survivors who had walked through the fire and come out the other side. See you around, Elijah. See you, Sarah. I watched her walk away, disappearing into the crowd. I turned and walked toward the hospital. My phone buzzed. It was an email from the dean of the medical school. They wanted me to give the keynote speech at the graduation ceremony next month. The theme was integrity in medicine. I smiled. I knew exactly what I was going to say. I was going to tell them about a boy with mechanic's hands. I was going to tell them about the cost of a lie versus the value of the truth. I was going to tell them that you can buy a degree, you can buy a car, you can even buy a wedding, but you cannot buy the steadiness of your own soul when the lights go out. I walked past a garage on my way to the hospital. I heard the sound of an impact wrench, zzzt, zzzt. I smelled the oil and the exhaust. For a moment, I stopped. I looked at the mechanic under the lift. He was covered in grease, sweating, wrestling with a rusted bolt. 16 years ago, my father told me that was my destiny. He meant it as a curse. He meant it as a prison. But looking at that mechanic and then looking down at my own hands, hands that had fixed engines to pay for tuition, hands that had carried boxes to buy books, hands that now held human hearts, I realized something. There is no shame in labor. There is no shame in dirt. The only shame is in pretending to be something you are not. My father was wrong. I was smart enough. I was strong enough. And these hands, these clumsy workers' hands, they built a life that no one can take away from me. I walked into the hospital entrance. The security guard nodded at me. "Morning, Dr. Mercer." "Morning, Carl." I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the top floor. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the steel panel. I didn't see the invisible sun anymore. I saw a man who was whole. I took a deep breath, ready for my shift, ready to fix what was broken. Because that's what I do. I'm Elijah Mercer. I'm a mechanic of the heart. And business is good. This story isn't just about a family drama or a revenge moment at a wedding. It's about the toxic power of labels. My parents labeled me slow and manual labor, while labeling my brother genius and success. We both spent our lives trapped in those boxes, me fighting to break out, and Julian terrified to fall out. My father thought money and status were the only metrics of worth. He was willing to destroy his financial future and his integrity to maintain an image. But in the end, the truth is the only currency that matters. You can fake a lifestyle, but you can't fake character. Have you ever had someone close to you underestimate you or try to keep you in a box? How did you break free? Did you confront them? Or did you just quietly succeed like I did? Type good in the comments if you believe that hard work always beats fake status. Or share your story below. I read every single one, and trust me, I know how it feels. Let's support each other. Thank you for listening to my story.